Let's take a look at the settings that are available for items and lists in SharePoint. Here we are in our Employees list, and if I click the Items tab of the ribbon, you'll notice that I can create a new item, which I could also do by clicking here. When I select one or more items, now some of the other commands on the ribbon are available. For example, I can view this item in a form. I can edit the item, which of course I could do simply by choosing that I wanted to edit the item here. I can also see who this item has been shared with. I can delete this item. So all of these commands are commands that are actually available to me here. And while workflows are based on an entire list, I have the ability to fire a workflow if there is a workflow assigned to this particular list. So I could say, for example, please take the workflow that says send information to this person and run that by clicking this button and choosing the appropriate workflow. You'll learn more about workflows later in the course. This is the social networking section of the list, which is to say I'd like to go ahead and classify this item by entering a tag. So you'll learn more about tags when we look at social networking, but we can tag individual items in a list so that we can track them as part of our method of classifying information. When you tag items, you can either have a personal tag that only you can see, or you can have a public tag so other folks can see it as well. When I click the List tab of the ribbon, I'm now seeing commands that apply to the entire list. So, for example, I can switch to a quick edit view. That's the same view I get when I click Edit this list. It's the view that in prior versions was called a datasheet view. Or I could click View to go back to my standard view. This is where I create and manage views, where I switch from one view to another. Here I can email a link to the entire list to someone or set up an RSS feed, two different ways of sharing. In the same way that I could tag an individual list item, I also have the ability to tag the entire list so that information about changes to the list will show up in my newsfeed, part of my social networking here in SharePoint. I can connect the entire list to Outlook. It's not enabled right now. It depends on what type of list it is. So the types of lists that connect to Outlook are the ones that actually exist in Outlook: calendars, contacts, and tasks. I can export this entire list to Excel. When I do that, I'm making a copy. There's nothing synchronized about it. When I'm working in Excel, changes I make there aren't reflected here. And if I'm working here, we don't have changes that are reflected in Excel. If we want to have a synchronized list with Excel, you'll learn more about that later in the course when we talk about integration touchpoints between Microsoft Office and Microsoft SharePoint. Some lists can also be opened with Access or Project, depending on the type of list they are. We have different capability built into different types of lists. In the Customized List group, we see choices that affect how a user would interact with the list. I can customize the form that's used to enter information using InfoPath, yet another application that works with SharePoint. I have the ability to edit the list in SharePoint Designer, to add quick steps here like the same types of quick steps we see in Microsoft Outlook. And I can also customize different forms that are used to display or to edit the forms data. These are forms that actually were built by SharePoint. If the setting that I want isn't here, the odds are good that where I'll find it is in list settings. And of course, as we've seen in other parts of SharePoint, I'll also see some choices that are already here. So I can add columns, as we did earlier, but I can also create new views from the ribbon or from here. I have choices about the list name, description, and navigation. Whether or not it appears on the quick launch is one piece of navigation, and I have the ability to delete this list. And if I do that, it will be gone. Here's the general rule. When we're looking at an individual item, you'll look in two different places to find out how to interact with it. One is you can click on the callout and see what kind of menu choices you have. If you don't find the choice you want here, you can look on the Items tab of the ribbon. If you're looking for how you affect the entire list, look first on the List tab of the ribbon. But if you don't find the choice here that you want, then I'd encourage you to click on List Settings and look here. It seems a little complex at first, but if you're clear about whether you're trying to affect one item or affect an entire list, then you'll know where to go on the ribbon and where to go in the command structure of SharePoint.